this time of transformation was taking place, and I was just like, I just don't feel that this is my gig anymore. I'm not inspired by cooking 400 meals a day. And I got into chefing because I loved food, not because, it was health at that point. It over time morphed into taking those skills, but understanding that food is so much more than what it looks like and how it tastes. And it took me on a journey of working with the body, and then that opened me up to more understanding around consciousness and the mind and our emotions and how all of that feeds back into the body. Back then, I was very uncomfortable in my physical body. At the end of it, the intention of being more confidence, more self-esteem from being happier within the body I was in, the reality was I was still unhappy. And I was like, hold on a second, I've got a great body now. Why am I not happy? And I was just like, okay, there's another piece missing here. How I look after my body that houses my consciousness, that is the vehicle by which I'm having this amazing experience called life. We don't have to wait for a catastrophe in our life to wake up.
That's for you. You gonna kick it off?
You're going, aren't you?
No, I can't.
Yeah, you can.
No.
Is that how every podcast?
No. I've been trying to, here's the thing, right? I can get up in front of a room and facilitate a pretty serious design forum, but I have trouble with the podcast doing the intros. I get shy for some reason. Should I try?
It's the safe place.
Yeah. Okay, here we go. Okay. Welcome to another episode of Design on Purpose, the WordPlay Studio podcast, where we talk about topics in line with our vision, planet Earth as a garden and work of art for all life. And today we are blessed to have Jo Rushton in the studio. Welcome, Jo.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, very welcome. Yeah, we've been meaning to track you down for some time. We've seen you lingering on the socials, on the, as followers of Czech Institute and the work that Paul's been doing. So yeah, it's awesome to have you here.
Thank you.
Could you give us a little intro to yourself and your work to give our listeners a bit of info?
Yes, I'll try to keep that top line. Summarize.
It's deep. You do a lot. Jo does a lot. So,
well, I guess, we've all got a life before the one we're living now. So I was a chef for probably the first, graduated from catering college back in England. So I'm from England originally, and was in catering for I guess the first 12, 15 years. And then that took me off traveling a lot. So would love and explore the cuisines of different places. So England, Channel Islands, took me off to America, South Africa, and then finally to Australia. And then when I arrived in Australia in 98, April 98, I came to Australia. And
was that were you in England then, or?
I was.
Yeah, okay.
I was. I always sort of popped back home in between the traveling experiences.
Whereabouts in England are you from?
I was born in Wimbledon.
Okay.
Brought up in Surrey until I was about 12, and then we moved up to Cheshire.
Okay,
up to
cool.
the Midlands.
Cool. Nice.
And so then arrived in Australia and came out as a backpacker, traveling, obviously cooking my way around. Had some great experiences in the Outback and Northern Territory, doing these, 21-day Outback experiences where I'd be the cook on the, on the journey, which was a lot of fun, and, learned a lot about the bush foods. And
did you cook in the dirt?
Tucker. Yes.
Did you make some Johnny cakes? Did you do Johnny cakes?
We did. Well, we did the scones. We did the probably the equivalent of that. And cooking in the earth, and cool. So it was some great experiences there. And then hit Sydney, and I think within about 2 months of being in Australia, myself and my partner at the time said, if we get an opportunity to stay, let's take it. And then we were about a month towards the end of our visa, And we were like, okay, so New Zealand's next. And then about a month before we were due to leave, my partner was offered an opportunity to stay. She got sponsorship through a recruitment company at the time. And that gave me an opportunity to stay on a bridging visa.
Yep.
So I did so, and that gave me an opportunity then to look for my own sponsorship, which I did. I was taken on by the Australian Navy.
No way.
Down at Watson's Bay.
Okay.
All of their catering was out to private tender by this time.
Yeah.
So I worked for the company that did all the catering for all armed forces. And so I had this beautiful drive to work every day to Watson's Bay and was there for about 4 or 5 years. And then this time of transformation was taking place, and I was just like, I just don't feel that this is my gig anymore. I'm not inspired by cooking 400 meals a day for the Navy and serving up another tray of chips. And
I was going to say, I can't imagine the Navy's diet being.
Yeah, what was the food like there?
Yeah,
seed oils galore.
They'd get pretty disappointed if every meal didn't have chips with it. So that gives
chips
you
as in just
fries.
Chippies,
chippies, hot chips.
Yeah, hot chips.
Yeah.
There you go, hot chips.
Okay.
And
Wow.
and I tried to bring in a healthier experience to that culture, but that was challenging. And at that point, my whole outlook and what I was being introduced to was opening me up to more of an understanding of health and the importance of food. I mean, I got into chefing because I loved food, not because, it was health at that point. It was about great food, tasting great and looking great. And then that, over time morphed into taking those skills, but understanding that food is so much more than what it looks like and how it tastes. And so at that point, I was making, moves, didn't know what I wanted to do. My girlfriend at the time turned around and said, well, when you're not in the kitchen, you're always in the gym. So, you're always trying to balance out the two. So why don't you go and do a course in personal training? So that's actually what I did. I went and did a course in personal training, and then that led me into being introduced to Paul Chek. And that took me down a whole path of studying his disciplines. And, that was 20 years ago. And I've been on a trajectory of learning about health from the physical ground upwards. And, that takes us on a journey. It certainly took me on a journey of working with the body. And then that opened me up to more understanding around consciousness and the mind and our emotions and how all of that feeds back into the body. And that, that really brings me, I guess, to where I am today, which is in a place of working with people in a very, I call it multidisciplinary way, because it's holistic. It's, really about understanding the whole being and helping them to understand the nature of their whole being.
Yeah.
And all parts of what I've experienced so far come into play with that. Food, how that affects us, how it affects how we think, feel, move. Exercise, how that affects how we think, feel, and move. Yeah. And everything's sort of unfolded from there.
What was the catalyst of this,
I was going to
this
ask that question
transformation?
too.
Like, it's always so interesting to know, what really drove. Was there a point in time or a particular moment that really triggered this change of perspective and following this path? Like, how did that transformation take place?
Change of career. Look, I think that was a slow burning flame within me, that when I was at the Navy base at Watson's Bay, I was in my late 20s at that point, and starting to explore me more. And, back then I was very uncomfortable in my physical body. And I was lacking self-esteem and experiencing a lot of, for me, what I now see in hindsight, lack of self-worth. And so moving more into the health and wellness was really about me looking, first of all, it was about me trying to create a body that I thought was going to give me the confidence that I lacked. And that was a journey in itself. I went off and did bodybuilding for
No way.
physique,
Wow.
competing for 4 years. And of course, you know, that was a journey in itself because I ended up with a great looking body on the outside.
It's not functional really, is it?
It's not very functional, and it leaves you with those training disciplines, which, you know, have changed and come a long way since.
Isolated movements,
and in terms of food and nutrition, very restrictive. So you're not ever actually feeding and replenishing and rejuvenating the body. You're just depleting it more. But as I said, those techniques have changed and evolved a lot since I was, you know, in that industry. And so I, you know, ended up with what looked like a great physique on the outside, but then I was, you know, dreadfully, you know, I was dying on the inside. And I came out of that 4-year journey and experience learning everything I needed to know how not to look after the body.
Yeah.
What better way to learn?
Part of it.
Yes, we're familiar with that.
Right. And from there, I met Paul Check at towards the end of that journey, by which time, you know, I was suffering from symptoms of leaky gut, IBS, you know, lots of issues, sore joints, overtraining, all those boxes that, you know, I help people overcome these days. And met Paul. The first class I went to with Paul, he was over in Australia doing his tour, and I went to a class in the use of a Swiss ball. You know, he's kind of known as the Swiss ball guy. Brought the Swiss ball into a gym and started to use that as a functional piece of equipment to support the body to you know, work effectively. And I went along to that workshop, and I was just blown away by, you know, his mind, his presence, his energy, and you know, what he could do with a Swiss ball.
And I guess you had stuff in common, right? Because he was a paratrooper and you were working in the Navy. I guess it's a similar kind of connection too.
Well, you know, I could only talk from the perspective of food in the Navy versus what his experience as a trooper was. But we got on, and I was very pulled towards his holistic lifestyle coaching course, which is the first course that I did. And it came in my life just when I needed it, when I was searching for how could I, you know, where does my health need to go next? Like, I've created this experience where, you know, I might look great on the outside, but the reality is I'm not healthy. And, you know, health, as we know, is created from the inside out. It's an inside job.
Yeah.
And I also, you know, a massive realization for me with that experience was that at the end of it, you know, the intention of being more confidence, more self-esteem from being happier within the body I was in, the reality was I was still unhappy. And I was like, hold on a second, I've got a great body now. Why am I not happy? Why am I not, you know, in love with myself? And I was just like, okay, there's another piece missing here.
Yeah.
And that was the beginning of the journey when I went to holistic lifestyle coaching, and the principles and the philosophies that we were taught in level 1 started to open my eyes up to, you know, where I was focusing, which was on the outer, not on the inner. And so, so then the journey started back.
Yeah. Because he spent quite a bit of time in Australia, didn't he, Paul? I think I've heard him talking about that. He's visited quite a few times.
He used to train like the Canberra Raiders, I think, and sports teams. And he said, like I heard on the pod, I think him talking about how Australians just sort of took it on? Like before, it was like it kind of clicked here for some reason.
Australians are quite receptive to that stuff, even with the work that we do, like the collaboration design, systems design stuff. We have the most practitioners in Australia than anywhere else in the world. So for some reason, I don't know, Aussies take that stuff in. I don't know.
Very
why.
open-minded.
Yeah.
You know.
With some things.
With
some things, yeah.
Yeah, not everything.
But how did you come across that, Joe? Like how did you first find Paul Chek? Because social media wasn't really around then, was it?
Alan Gall, a friend of mine at the time, literally just turned around to me and said, "Have you ever heard of Paul Chek? I think you'd love his stuff."
Okay.
And I was like, "No, never heard of the guy." And looked him up from there.
Yeah.
And he was, going to be in Australia within a couple of months of Alan saying, you should check him out. And that's how I found him, literally just through someone mentioning his name and me going and doing a bit of Google and research and looking into him and going, yeah, he sounds like a cool guy to go and listen to.
Yeah.
And that's how it started.
Mm. And you progressed from there because you're obviously now a faculty member at Chek Institute. So what was that journey like there? And also, has the material changed much in that time?
Yes, it has. It's morphed because obviously also a lot of Paul's advanced training programs are now taught by faculty. He will come in and teach, CP4 or what's now IMS4, and he will still come and co-facilitate with Angie HLC3. But he's, sort of stepped back somewhat and handing over to faculty. So the material has, it's a combination of two things. It's bringing the material into a format where the faculty can embrace it and bring their personality and bring them to the material, as well as updating it as, science and, trends change, and it's really keeping the information updated. But, what I'll say to that is that at the roots of what Paul teaches, because it is so foundational, there's so much of the core of the philosophy of what he teaches is the core of who we are. So it's not going to change. Yeah. It's ever evolving and expanding in its experience, but the core of what he teaches is always there. So that journey, in truth, when I did HLC1, I went on and did HLC2, and he was still teaching the courses at the time back then. So, of course, every time he came out to Australia, I did HLC2, I think 3 or 4 times. That's how in-depth the course is. Every time I would go back, I would be like, "You sure this course hasn't changed? You didn't teach that last time." And he was just like, "Oh, you just weren't awoken to that yet. And that's okay. That's why you've come back." And I'd just look at him and say, "I swear you didn't talk about that last time." But, we are all ready for what we're ready for, when we're ready. And so clearly my soul was calling me back for going deeper into the teachings each time. And so I did. And then, one year he was out, and I always remember we were over at Donald Carr's place, and I was over at the sink. I was in the kitchen prepping a meal for us, and he came over to me and he just, whispered in my ear. He said, "So when are you going to start teaching for me?" And I was just like, "Oh, what?" And he said, "Yeah, it's time. It's time that you started to share what you've embodied." And I was just like, "Oh, I don't know, Paul, I'm not that sort of academically minded with, all the scientific side of what you teach." And he said, "I don't want you to teach that." He said, "I want you to teach someone how you live. Just go and show them how you live and bring that experience to class." Yeah. He said, "The rest of the science they can read about. But to actually be a catalyst for change in someone's life, it's to teach them that it's possible. And you can do that by sharing with them how you do it." And so I thought, yeah, okay, I can do that bit. And that's what I've always taken to my classes is honesty around the level of scientific understanding I have for things, and
Yeah.
I'll only go so far into the biochemistry and into the metaphysics from, the quantum mechanics and, neuroscience side of things that I have a handle on, but it's not my area of expertise. But I'll certainly share how I bring those philosophies and understandings into my life and how they have changed and improved my life. So from that perspective, that's where my teachings come from. And that's how I share in class. The rest I'll be like, there's the literature, knock yourself out.
Yeah.
Well, that's what really, I guess, it's really cool, the whole philosophy around that, which led me into learning more about it, is, the whole holistic way of health. It's not just one thing. It's not just nutrition or, physical health, which for me, I put a lot of kind of important or belief into for a lot of my life leading up to kind of discovering this whole more holistic view of things. But for people that are, I guess, and also just around, with being a teacher or being a master in those areas, it's like you're really embodying these principles and these things to be able to teach them. And they're not necessarily, like you're saying, like having to do everything. It's like knowing what are these things that you can actually do yourself and that you live by, that you can then pass on to others. What are some of these teachings? I know there's probably a lot of them, but
How much time have we got?
yeah. But what are some of the ones that you've really embodied and have really taken on in your life?
Well, I'll share that also from the perspective that in my experience, the journey of growing and evolving and developing myself, has been from learning about the physical first and foremostly. And that's what as we grow up, more through puberty, what we become more aware of first and foremostly is our physical. And we become very identified with the physical world. And that becomes our focus. And so the physical, is this beautiful gateway by which we are experiencing and manifesting spirit, creation energy, whatever name you want to give it. God, Tom, Dick, Harry, don't care what you call it. But there is this creation energy that we're breathing through us. And we're having this physical experience of it. And so often we are so identified through the physical. And so my first experiences of the teachings and what I still embrace and embody today is how I look after my temple, how I look after my body that houses my consciousness, that is the vehicle by which I'm having this amazing experience called life. And I've noticed through choices that there are certain things that my body and my vibration resonates well with and uplifts me and creates a better experience of life. And there are choices that diminishes that and lowers my vibration and diminishes that experience. So learning very much through food, learning very much through, as Paul would teach, the primal pattern type. Everyone has their own unique biochemistry. What makes you as unique on the outside, from the color of your eyes to your skin pigment to the color of your hair, that's unique. Just like your fingerprint is unique. There's not another you anywhere in this world. And the same goes for your biochemistry. And so, we're all made up the same substance, but we have just a slightly, different experience of that. And it's learning. That was my first step into really learning to fine tune my energy through food, through really listening to what food does my body respond well to. And energetically, that electromagnetic nutrition that we get from food that's, dependent on the soil, as we know, that it's grown in. And then how is that food interfacing with my biochemistry and paying attention to that. And so that was, one of the first principles. And because of my chefing background, I guess that was an easy place for me to start because I had skills in the kitchen, so I could translate those skills. Now I'm just paying attention to where my food comes from and paying more attention to how I feel when I'm eating it. And, if we all pay a little bit more attention to actually how we feel after we've eaten what we've eaten, then we'll pay a bit more attention to what we stick on the end of our fork.
Yeah, we've just gone through a bit of a journey on this, obviously just finishing up this cleanse, this parasite cleanse.
Yeah, with corrective culture.
Yeah, with corrective culture. It was really good. And we talked about it a little last podcast, but today's today's our first day off the cleanse. And yeah, we noticed a lot of things about food because we cut, the protocol is you're cutting out seed oils, gluten,
sugar, starch.
So we're eating completely organic stuff and eating good food. The food was great and we had a lot of fun with it. But you do notice how food is a crutch in a way. Like you go for things because they give you some kind of emotional response, and you think that when you're addicted to things, it's just like, caffeine or alcohol or whatever, but there's all these other things that you go to for comfort or something.
Yeah.
And it's just, so then when you don't have that, then you're left with, you just kind of have to lean into it and go, okay, well, what's this thing that's coming up around that? And
that would normally be taken care of.
yeah, and you kind of really just have to look at it. You've got nowhere to go. So that was one part of the cleanse that I just didn't really anticipate. And it was quite interesting to see what came up. Did you find that as well?
That was a big part of it, but also for me was the way that it affects my consciousness and energy just in general. I don't think I've ever felt so clear in my life the last month, but it's purely because of the food. And I realize how much food makes me feel. So it's the emotional thing again in a way, but also just like on a level, like if I eat something delicious and nourishing, I'm like, yes. I'm like looking at it just like, yeah. And then I'm realizing I'm not eating that, all the time. Like, so there's this like ability to eat something and just feel amazing. Like I can feel it go into my body and digest it, and it's like, whoa. And then, so it was a lot, and then it makes you're clear. But when you're eating like heavy stuff, sluggish stuff, you're eating it and you're kind of like, it's tasty, but like I'm down now. It makes you drop. And then it kind of has like an ongoing effect and the digestion.
Even in your mood, like we noticed we're on this like roller coaster.
Yeah.
Because we're like coffee in the morning and then we'll have a beer in the arvo. But then on the cleanse.
Lunch, whatever.
Yeah, we're kind of now like leveled out a bit. So don't have all these like emotional like peaks and troughs.
Which completely changes your ability to meet the day, right? And meet what comes to meet you during the day.
Yeah.
Your ability to therefore manage stress.
Yeah. Well, we were using tools to manage stress, like beer. We do like to have a beer, but we were using that as like a stress management. But also what's interesting has opened up vibrationally different types of people coming into our lives. So I've been since clearing out all these parasites and which we don't need to talk about again. No, I don't mean. But you know what? I'm
attracting parasite-free people.
Yeah. We're just really high vibe, amazing people are just kind of like the gates are open and they're all just coming in. So it's pretty wild.
It is. There's the law of resonance right there.
Yeah.
It's a powerful law. If only we could study it and acknowledge that it governs so much of our experience and that we, through the law of vibration, can change our resonance. We can work with our vibration and therefore change what we attract.
Yeah.
So
yeah, a lot came out of it. So we're going to take the week off and then we're going to do the next round.
Oh, wow.
Round 2. Well, we got to. There's still lots of these liver fluke things coming out, but yeah, we're not going back to how things were, are we, Tom?
No, and just talking about stress, like it's such an interesting, and I'm sure you can talk about it for days. I'm sure, the different levels of stress. Because when your food is potentially a stressful thing you're putting in your body, so if you're stressed in your environment, like from work or, on that kind of level, and then you're feeding yourself with stressful food, and then your body's having to, like, you're just becoming more and more inflamed and more stressed. It's like this compounding habit you're just building, and then you forget what it's like to feel normal.
That's
you think
it.
you feel fine.
Yeah, you're in that loop. Yeah. And you're living by the hormones of stress. And then you continue to feed those hormones of stress through the choices.
Yeah.
And
you don't know any different. That just becomes
That's
the
it.
lens in which you're viewing things, right?
That's it. And, it does take a catalyst, whatever that catalyst is. And unfortunately, in one of your last podcasts or in one of the last posts that I was listening to you talking about, it was like, don't wait for a crisis to change.
Yeah.
We don't have to, wait for a catastrophe in our life to wake up.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, yet that is often the case, and that's also fine too. That's part of growth. That's what it is to live in a world of polarity. Is the polarity, the law of polarity is teaching us, and it's teaching us through that lower polarity that we meet at times. But if we can start to listen to our higher consciousness, our higher self, and follow the guidance, which is what is challenging, often we can receive that guidance and even be conscious to that guidance. But because sometimes it doesn't make sense, or we don't see how that's going to unfold, and the mind wants some sort of guarantee, or it wants the roadmap, and without that roadmap it won't follow the guidance. So sometimes we'll receive that guidance but we won't act on it and follow through.
Yeah, well, that's it. And it's an interesting place to be as a civilization, because we probably innately knew all this stuff. This was just normal. And now we've lost our way and we're trying to find our way back. So there's, amazing teachers out there like yourself that can help guide us there. And it's like, what's the process to, how do we make this just the normal way of living again? What's the journey there? Is it, and I guess you kind of touched on it a bit there about just being an example, right? Being taking care of your own corner and being the example.
It starts with you. Yeah, it does. It starts with you. And part of that, I guess, is also letting go of this idea of normal as well, and allowing yourself to experience who you are outside of any boxes that, create that norm. And, I guess in hindsight, I've been on that journey all my life. Things that have come to meet me that have, caused me to really look at who I am, and am I going to be true to who I am? I mean, in my 20s, accepting that I was gay. And that was, that for me was a massive catalyst for change. No, I'm not gay.
Yeah, I get that too. I feel a bit like that too. Like I've kind of got a bit of like internalized homophobia or something like that. I don't know. I have this stuff that comes up around that, and I'm working through it. But that's not me. It's a society thing.
Yeah, and I had to meet all of that.
Yeah.
Consciousness within me.
Yeah.
I was hiding in the closet for 3 years.
Yeah.
So afraid of how the family would react, and, friend society, and, and whilst coming to terms with that's who I am as well. And the discomfort of that realization, because you had to, really meet those illusions around, oh, well, I'm not normal. Well, hold on a second. What's normal?
Yeah.
And, you have to work through that paradigm. And so I think that the catalyst for change for me started, very young. And I've been on that process of growth and transformation, obviously now more consciously. Back then, I would say unconsciously. And so it started, as I said, with, working with my body. That led me into then, with Paul's work, going more deeply into really meeting, as you said before, leaning into what's really sitting there.
Yeah.
I mean, jeepers. I can go back into my 20s. You look at food, I was addicted to carbs.
Yeah.
I don't
we
think
love pippies here, right? Don't worry, we know.
I don't think I left the house before I was, 8 slices of toast down
with
honey on it. and your processed white bread.
Yeah, just sugar and white processed bread. Yeah, pretty
Right.
much.
That was, or I needed, in the industry of chefing, obviously some double shifts and that sort of thing. I could get home at 1 a.m. and, I'd down 3 bowls of cereal because I hadn't eaten all day.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden the adrenaline starts to, the cortisol levels start to drop and you start to realize how ravenous and hungry you are. And then it's like, oh God, what's there?
Yeah.
And it's, your cornflakes or your muesli, whatever. And so that was that whole experience of being A, addicted to carbs and B, learning when you start to pay attention, learning to the foods that you were addicted to emotionally for that crux.
Because we do that with kids, like you see, like I'm not a parent and I'm, I don't know how parents do it. I mean, it's like the hardest job in the world, I think. But, as a kid, if you be good, you get this, or using food as like a tool, a reward. So I don't, does it come from that and then it just stems over time? But it's, we do use food as a society in that way. So
we do. And so then there comes a point where, if you're on a journey of wanting to learn about yourself and you're curious enough to ask the questions around, why do I feel the way I feel? Why am I attracting what I'm attracting in life? Why do I keep on recreating this experience? Yeah. Then if you're curious enough about that and you've moved out of that kind of life just happens to me, victim mentality, then you start to open your eyes to who and what you really are, which is this vibrational being of, consciousness. You're a vibrational being.
And on that, like when did that start to drop in, or how did you get into the spiritual side of things? Was that through Paul or?
So that was initially through Paul. Through HLC2, you walk through into understanding more of the spiritual side of who you are. And at the same time, what was interesting, again, I didn't realize it at the time, but I met Paul and also Inasa Mabu Ishtar, who is another teacher of mine. And I met both of them roughly within the sort of 18 months of each other. And they've both been my steady teachers and mentors, for the last 15 years, 20 years. And I actually finally got them to meet last year on a podcast. I said to Paul, you've really got to have a chat with Ishtar. And I said to Ishtar, you've really got to have a chat with Paul. And I said, you guys have both been so instrumental in my own personal growth and my spiritual path. And so I got them together on a podcast and they had a good 3 hours of.
Was that Living 4D podcast?
Yeah.
Wow. I got to listen to that one.
Yeah.
We're really into that podcast. We listen to it a lot.
Yeah.
I've learned so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was Paul, HLC2, opening the doors more to understanding the nature of consciousness. And then with my work with Ishtar, I've dived, a whole lot more deeply. I would say, she said in a retreat once, Jo over here, I've watched her just swim on the surface for many years. And then finally she decided to take a deep dive. And, and I resonate with that now. And I can also really see that in my students, that, we do spend time dipping our toe in and just, floating on the surface. And then there comes a time when you're either called and ready to really listen to your soul and you will go deeper, or that time's not yet. And both is fine.
Yeah, it's interesting, like when you're in a certain place in life and something appears, and that's the moment, because it might have been in your environment beforehand, but you're not aware to it. And then, you know, you're going through a certain period and then something appears. And very, very much for me, that was Paul Check through the podcast a few years at the beginning of COVID. And I was kind of going through it just felt really, I was feeling really vulnerable at the beginning of that whole situation and confused. And, you know, I feel like it was like probably the first sort of crisis global thing that I've ever experienced, as, you know, and so it was like all very new. And then I found Paul's podcast, and I was like, it just was like the perfect moment to just guide me through the whole thing and beyond, you know, because there's so much to it. But what kinds of things do people commonly come to you with? Is there common themes, or is it where please?
Yeah, look, I'm noticing that it's such now a reflection of my own journey. You know, the more work you do on yourself, you start to attract people that are going to benefit from the path that you've walked, that you have something to share from that. And so, you know, back in my days of personal training, you know, I would literally attract people that, you know, wanted to work at the level of the physical. And they were very, as I said, very focused on the physical. And that's where we would focus. And as my own journey has evolved into understanding consciousness, understanding myself, how to work through different realms and dimensions of consciousness, then who I attract has changed as a result. So now I work with people that, you know, are very challenged in their life for one reason or another. They maybe are going through again a career change. They're more often than not, people find me when they're going through some kind of, you know, midlife crisis, which, you know, as we know, is a midlife opportunity. And it's really about helping them to navigate through that, and helping them to see the opportunity that they're being given. So I can work with anybody from, you know, an individual who's either come with presenting health issues, and so then it's back to the foundations, looking after addressing the physical issues first. And that's also, you know, something that's really important for people to realize, that, you know, when you are struggling mentally and emotionally, we have to create some stability in the physical biochemistry of who you are. And, you know, if you're in pain, for example, in chronic pain, then unless we really address to alleviate that pain and inflammation, you're really going to be challenged to look at that deeper mental and emotional issues, because you're always overcome by the pain that you're experiencing. So, you know, we always work to bring stability and harmony and balance to the physical, to the matter of you. Yes. And then as we do that, then we can go more deeply into the non-physical part of you that is always governing and influencing the physical part. So working with people, I don't do as much of that anymore, because I do attract those that are and have worked on themselves at the level of the physical, and now there's, you know, that they're on a good lifestyle, they're, you know, eating well, etc. And I attract more people that are on that path of conscious awareness for what they're choosing, but now they are ready to address the mental, emotional, and spiritual crisis that they're going through. And so, you know, it's at that point that a lot of the other teachings that I've been exposed to through Ishtar and Paul that I'm able to offer now. And in all honesty, that comes from the work on yourself. I've really, one of the keys of being an effective coach or practitioner in the field that I'm in is, if you don't look after your own vibration, if you are not doing what is required to lift and harmonize your own field of consciousness, then you're never going to be effective with anyone else. Because for me to affect change in someone else, it happens because my own field of consciousness is open and expanded. And I'm opening that pillar and sharing that light with another. And when I'm doing that, they're receiving a transmission. And it's that transmission of frequency that is activating consciousness within them. And so if I'm not looking after my own vibration, if I'm not looking after my own field of consciousness, and I'm vibrating at the same level as they are, well, then we're just going to sit in the same soup and share the same soup of consciousness. And nothing much is going to change through the law of resonance.
Yeah.
And so to be a catalyst for change and to be a catalyst for helping, supporting someone to heal, because it's not me who's doing the healing, the only way I can be effective in someone's healing is to be able to offer harmonized consciousness, to be able to offer that field of harmony and balance. And when I offer that and someone is willing to come and receive from that, then their field starts to harmonize because they're choosing to receive the frequency and the field of consciousness that I've created. And if they're willing to come in and receive from that, they're going to receive energy, they're going to receive wisdom, they're going to receive knowledge, and therefore consciousness. That's what consciousness is, energy with intention. And so they're going to start to receive that, and that's going to awaken parts of their own consciousness. And it's drip by drip, little by little. And that's what helps to activate a healing response in somebody.
That's so true. That's definitely a big lesson that we've had from our teachers in the work that we do in co-design, because when we bring everyone together, we're creating a field, and the team gets there earlier. The team gets there a day or two before. So you notice those events that when the team's working really well together before the participants even arrive, that's when the participants do really good work, because we're already creating that vibration of harmony and collaboration and working well together as a team. And you just know when you're going to have a good event, because you can tell by how the team's going. Exactly, the energy.
The energy.
Yeah.
And you've created a strong portal. You know, you're opening a portal.
Yeah, that's right.
And allowing then that creation energy to flow through you and to share that. And any being that's ready to receive that. And I think that's the other key that's often not spoken about. And for those that are looking for healing, that are still looking outside of themselves for that healing, you know, going to this practitioner, that practitioner, this healer, that healer, in the hope to be healed, fixed in some way. You know, my message to anybody who recognizes that that's a pattern within themselves is to recognize that healing can only take place in the presence of another to the degree that the person that you've gone to is holding that vibrational space, and that the person that's wishing to be supported and looking for a healing is open to receive that. And often we can think, I'm open to receive. But if we're only open to receive through our mind and not through our consciousness, through our heart's consciousness, then we're not going to receive that healing.
Yeah.
And that's a journey in itself, to come to a place of discernment between, am I really open to receive? Or have I just said to myself, oh yeah, you know, I've come because I want you to do this. Yeah. Well, really, you've come with a consciousness that says, I'm broken, can you fix me? You've got something I need.
Yeah. Is that connected to this self-worth work that you've been doing, you think? Is that, because you talked a bit about that at the workshop around being open to receive? And
because it's so interesting, like, because I've definitely experienced this, and the more that and with self-worth too, like linking that in, the less self-worth you have, the more you look to others to help you, right? And the less responsibility you take because you're not worthy enough to take on the responsibility. And it's like this whole process of really stepping or letting go of what you need or want externally, and going through that process of, okay, what am I really doing? And going back to, like you're saying, in like the health coming from the inside first, inside job. I think you said it. I love that one. Yeah, it's so interesting. Like it's like just bringing your power back in to then let it expand out, rather than the opposite, which I think is common. I guess maybe depending on what life stage you're at or whatever, but especially with healing modalities and things and all these different options you can go and look to go get something from, rather than being open to receive, like you're saying. That's super interesting.
You know, I had I'll share a little experience, if you'd like me to.
Yes, please.
It was probably, it's certainly a standout for me in terms of one of the experiences that I had of real catalyst for growth. It was a really an aha moment for me. I had finished in a 12-year relationship, and it was my first serious relationship. And so I was, in that phase of just, taking time out, being by myself, readjusting, and of course, leaning into all the emotions that would come up as a result of that. And I remember, and by this time I was, I think, coming towards the end of my second sacred mystery school. And so I was doing a lot of work on chakras and energy bodies and meeting a lot of consciousness within me. And I was meeting a lot of grief and emotions. And I asked myself, I was sitting in meditation, and I just asked, what is it that I need to know and understand about myself at this time that's going to help me move forward? And I don't know if you've ever read Conversations with God, Neil Donald Walsh. It's a great book. So I was having what I call one of these conversations with God moments, where I had asked this question, and I'd gone upstairs, on top of the roof, and was just sitting, and it was like this little voice said, you need to get a pen, you need to write this down. And I was just like, okay. And so I had my journal. And it was like literally the question I had just asked was getting answered. And it was this, and I'll never forget, it was this energy, strong vibe, just frequency was just moving through me. And I was just like, right, this is really weird. And I started writing down this answer to the question I just asked. And the voice just said, I want you to write down these 4 words. And so I wrote them: appreciation, approval, acceptance, and acknowledgement. And I was just like, okay. And then I said, so what do I do with these words? Like, why am I writing them down? And this little voice, I just got this download, and this full-on energy just flowed through me. And it just shared with me in this most loving way all the different ways in which I stepped outside of myself for approval, appreciation, acceptance, and acknowledgement. And it was literally showing me, and it was my first experience of how my lack of self-worth would compensate for itself by looking for someone else's approval, looking for someone else to accept what I was doing or who I was being, or reaffirm me in some way through acknowledgement, approval, appreciation, or acceptance. And I sat for hours fascinated by this journey I was just being taken on, where I became aware of all the places. I literally went, oh my God, there's not one thing that I choose in life that doesn't have an agenda of somehow needing approval, acceptance, acknowledgement, or appreciation. I'm like, this is ridiculous.
Wow, that's big.
And I was just like, it was, I speak about it now because I see in reflection what a catalyst that moment, self-realization was. It was really showing me what I was choosing and from what vibration I was choosing it from, which was all about the lack of what I felt I had within me. And so I was really being taught, again, in hindsight, not that I realized it at the time, I was being taught a lot about my inner child and how it was that my inner child was still looking to be approved of, needing that, affirming. And so I started to, over the coming months, I really just started to become aware of that in my interactions with others, in my choices. And I started to really work with this part of myself, and I could become overtly aware in the moment. Oh, that's my inner child, really unsure right now, really looking for approval, looking to be, validated. And in that moment, I started just to speak to my inner child, and I used to, it's okay, we got this. And that would help me shift gears. I wouldn't have, because I was such the people pleaser, that would become part and parcel of that whole paradigm of looking for approval. You would, your choices would have an agenda to it. And so if by doing something for someone, I thought that I was going to get more approval or more acknowledgement, then I'd start to, as Paul would say, you don't know the value of your yes until you learn how to say no. And so I was starting to really look and pay attention as to how I wasn't valuing myself, because I couldn't say no out of the fear of not being accepted or approved of or appreciated. And of course, this is all about love. Yeah. It's all about, the fear of not being loved.
Yeah.
And so I learned a lot through that first experience of meditating and receiving where I was and what I needed to become aware of. And that was the first lot of deep inner work that I started to do. And hence one of the things that I do with people today is a lot of inner child therapy work that I've been taught through Ishtar, that was shared with her by the Ascended Masters, how to work with our inner child consciousness and how to connect back to the core of our inner child and work with the wounds that the consciousness of our inner child has, whether it's this lifetime or any other lifetime that it's carried it forward.
Yeah, amazing. We can definitely relate to that piece there, that self-worth piece and seeking approval, like even just with the consciousness of our business, like we definitely, we tend to over-deliver and, say yes and not set boundaries. And I think we're getting better at that now as growing as people and shifting the energy of our business. And what we've noticed is that people tend to actually value you more because you're saying no, because you're setting the boundaries and because you have self-worth. So it actually shifts things. But you have to get there. We have to get there as people for that to happen with our business.
That's right.
And
And what we're talking about when we say getting there, it's a vibration that you're holding. And this is, this is why the conversation is sometimes challenging to have, because people, we are so, we so relate to our experiences still through the masculine consciousness, which is all about taking action and doing stuff. I've got to take action for us to get a result. And so we often think about even what can I do to increase my self-worth? And we think it's an actionable thing that we have to do to increase our self-worth. When in actual fact, it's a vibration that we're working with. So, to your point before, when you said people value us more when we can say no, but what they're actually responding to is a vibration that you're holding, even though they're not aware that that's what they're responding to. They are attracted to a higher vibration that is holding light and holding truth.
Yeah.
And that's what they're actually attracted to. And, you know, it's a hard conversation dynamic to have because, you know, we're talking about what can't be weighed and measured. You know, we're talking about what can't be seen and touched, and yet governs everything that we can see and touch. You know, it's a paradox, which is, you know, I love chatting about, but it can be hard for, I mean, I was stuck in that paradigm, you know, for a long time. It's just like, you know, what are you talking about? You know, energy and vibration, and we just got to get shit done, right?
Yeah.
Just got to do this and take, you know, do this, and eventually things will happen. Well, you know, I've learned the hard way with that as well, you know?
Yeah.
I feel like I'm definitely learning the hard way with that.
Oh yeah. It's taking a beating over here.
It's constant. It's constant. And it's a tricky thing. Balance, like everything needs to be in balance, right? There's two sides of everything.
It's like that meme, you know, with the boot on the face. You know that one?
Yes, I know that one.
That's the one, yeah.
Yeah, but it's like where did it, or has it all gone wrong in this kind of society we exist in, you know, because it's getting worse and worse, like these sorts of mindsets and traumas and things to some degree. And it's as if and going back to the food stuff too, and I'm just thinking about cooking, even like doing this cleanse, it's like having relationships with things again, or rekindling these relationships that have been lost, whether if it's been your diet and you've been eating processed food, you've just forgotten, you've just detached yourself from the natural experience, the energetic exchange and that resonance of connecting with what you're putting in your body, which is like a huge part of life, right? And it's like, where has it all gone? You know, how's it ended up where we are now, and how do we like learn to rekindle these things?
It's a big question.
It is a big question.
Look,
let's not get cancelled.
I'm out of here. You see this, I'm going to bring it back to how we choose to approach and engage in our experiences, because I could say to you, Tom, you know, I actually see amazing change and transformation occurring.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, same.
I'm seeing lots of amazing people starting to really open and birth their light here on the earth. And I don't see so much of the devastation. Now, you know, let's keep it real, right? Yes, there is that occurring. But in answer to how can we contribute to the anchoring of more light here and moving towards bringing more light and consciousness to this beautiful planet, we need to focus on the vibration that we want to bring here, which means we need to focus on the vibration that we are holding. No easy feat at all, because it comes back to the fact that it is an inside job, and it requires us to work with the self-limiting beliefs, requires us to work with the energy that we're holding that is still keeping us in illusion to who and what we really are. It's still keeping us limited in that old paradigm that, you know, that all we are is what we can see, weigh, and measure. Is that really all you are, Tom?
No.
Right? And yet those that are struggling the most through this change and transformation that the earth is going through, because Mother Earth's not struggling. Like, again, we can see her, we can look at her through the eyes that tell us that she is.
Yeah.
But she's just moving through change and transformation. And so vibrationally, she is shifting. And if we continue to experience who and what we are purely through the belief that we're just matter, physical beings walking around having physical experiences, then our experiences will be limited to that. And when you look through the eyes of just that, yeah, shit's not so good. Yeah, there's a lot of devastation occurring at that level.
Yeah.
But when we start to connect to more than what we are, than just the physical, and we start to open and expand our consciousness, and we start to bring in more light and more love, and we start to allow the creation energy of the universe to flow through us, then all of a sudden our lenses that are like that, if that's all you're seeing, then your lens is, narrow.
Yeah.
And you're going to see only what's there, which becomes very limiting and therefore creates.
You're creating more of that.
More of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess in a long-winded way, I'm answering that by favoring not to avoid or deny what is there in the physical and the transformation that's taking place, but making a choice as to what I'm choosing to focus on.
Yeah.
And what consciousness and vibration I'm choosing to live, because I know now, through all that I've experienced, that I will get more of what I focus upon.
Yeah.
In other words, I don't just mean what I focus on mentally. And that's where we also get caught up thinking that, I can just think it into manifestation. We are vibrational beings, and we hold a resonance. And the more we pay attention to that resonance and where we are vibrating, then we start to realize we attract more of that. So rather than, focusing on all the negative that's going on in the world, because we can get caught up there and remain there, yes, and get into the woe me and, oh my God, how devastating everything is. I'd rather put my energy into how can we move through this, and what is the opportunity? What is the potential in this? Because the reality is we're moving through enormous change and transformation. Whenever there's change and transformation and an upgrade of our consciousness, there is always destruction. There is always the dismantling of the old to make room for the new. It's only our judgment of that dismantling that we put labels to.
Yeah, it's like I heard this, it's like when one door closes, one door opens, but there's another part to that where it's like it's hell in the hallway. So it's like, and our teachers, Matt and Gail, talk about this is like leaping the abyss. There's this jump that has to happen when we go through a transformation or a change, and it's like this chaos. It's like when you turn the radio, you're finding the new frequency and it's clear, and then it until it gets to the next one. It feels like we're kind of in that phase. And it's another thing on a level we're having to lean into it, like we spoke about, it's like just being in that discomfort, in that collective discomfort, and holding the light, being the example, finding the way through and then opening the doors to get them out of the hallway. So I totally am with you on that, but
I think how can we serve the collective and be in service to the collective? First of all, you have to be in service to your own light.
Yeah.
You have to come back and focus on yourself. And that isn't about being selfish. that is about taking responsibility and owning the contribution that you are to the world.
Yeah.
And stop seeing yourself as being separate to the collective. You know, we are, all of us have a part to play in what is occurring here on this planet. And it requires the greater collective to shift and lift in its vibration and consciousness for the new, they call it the new age that we're in, but for, you know, the age of Aquarius, to start to bring through the potential that's held within that.
Because it's kind of like, I was just talking about this to someone yesterday. It's like there's a difference between proactivism and activism. You know, you can be an activist and be opposed to the thing, be angry, then you're just creating more of that.
That's it.
But I like this idea of proactivism. What you're talking about is just, okay, well, we know that's there. We're not worried about that. Let's be proactive about creating the new thing.
Yeah.
And I'm totally on board for that.
Yeah. And you mentioned self, like being selfish, and that's been a massive realization for me too, is like like even what the definition of self is, like it's not just you, again, your physical boundaries here. It's like everything that is in your world and that you depend upon and it depends upon you. And it's like looking after yourself, what's around you is really, you know, what sustains your life and what that life is sustained by. And if we can all do that, you know, then we start to see more of a shift, more of a spreading of that.
Yeah. That's, you know, that's you opening up to the experience of what it is to be connected. That's the interconnectivity that we all hold. And when we realize that we are all connected and that this cause and effect that occurs through every one of our choices is that rippling effect that goes out into the field around us. And that it's, you know, what we do to ourselves, we do to another. What we do to another, we do to ourselves. And so,
gosh,
when we actually recognize that and have a deeper understanding of what that actually means, then we start to choose to focus our energy and our consciousness differently.
Yeah. And Jo, you've mentioned Ishtar a couple of times, you know, your other teacher. Can you share a little bit about your connection with Ishtar and what you've been learning there and some of the work that you guys have been doing together?
Yeah, so Ishtar is this beautiful being who is what we call, she's an embodied channel for a group of ascended masters. So she works with 33 ascended beings, ascended masters. She was a journalist herself in her younger years, and was called to her spiritual path, I think in her 40s. You can correct me, Ishtar, if I'm getting this wrong, but somewhere in her early 40s. And, you know, if you read about Ishtar's, you know, journey, there was a lot of, you know, resistance there to stepping onto that path. And so she's really embodied the journey of what it takes to open to her spiritual path and to be the channel that she is now. She has spent the last 15, 20 years bringing through channeled teachings from the masters that are here to help us. Not all masters that she channels have walked here on the earth, but the majority have. So they are in the mastery of what it is like they've been here. They've walked the planet Earth many times. They've had many journeys in the physical form. So they've come into mastery of what it is to be a light being manifested into physical form. And so they are sharing from having walked that path. They are sharing the wisdom and the keys that we need to learn as beings of light that have chosen to come here, experience what it is like to manifest our light into physical form, and learn to come into the mastery of physicality. And so the teachings that they offer are teachings that help us to come into the mastery of our own consciousness.
Yeah.
Learning about who and what we are. As I said before, why are we here? Why do we think the way we think? Why do we believe what we believe? Why do we manifest and create these experiences for ourselves? Why, understanding our karma, which is energy that we hold that isn't sitting in balance, essentially. There's lots of misunderstandings about what karma is, but essentially it's consciousness, it's energy that you're holding that is not in alignment to your light.
Okay.
Your dharma is in alignment to your light, but your karma is sitting out of balance to your truth. And so the schools that she has brought through from the masters are teachings from them that help us to come into our truth, that help us to understand the nature of the consciousness of God that we are, and help us to access that consciousness and therefore start to create through that consciousness, so that the heaven that we all talk about, that we think's up there, is actually here, and we can start to actually create it here.
Mm-hmm.
And live that manifested truth here on the earth. And so her teachings are all about frequency. And frequency work, as you guys know, is, still relatively new here on the earth. People actually bringing through high frequency work that holds frequency, higher consciousness. That's still relatively new. I mean, channels, embodied channels that are actually channeling frequency, not just knowledge, but actually bringing through a frequency with what they're channeling. It's probably only last 30 years, 40 years.
Or is that something that we used to have that has been forgotten and now we're regaining it? Maybe, I don't know. Or
for sure. It's been our natural way of being.
Yeah.
Yes. And, we, as we know, have moved further and further away from that. And so, we are being helped and supported to come back to that natural connection.
Yeah.
But that natural way of being, used to be handed down through the elders. So we didn't necessarily, our elders were our teachers. And they would share that frequency because they held it.
Yeah.
So now channeled courses. And so with the work that we do through Ishtar's schools, so she has three key schools. One is called the Master's Way, which is a 3-year self-mastery course, which is learning to work with your masculine consciousness, which is the frequency of light, and learning how you work with that in your own life. So it's all about your own masculine consciousness, how you, what it is that you're choosing and what are you creating through that choice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the second year is all about the feminine heart of God. It's all about the love frequency. And so it's all about learning to open to receive that frequency of love, the frequency of the void that all creation comes from. that nourishes us and nurtures us. And, you know, this is a huge learning for humanity, is to learn to open to receive through the feminine heart of God, because we've done all the creation through the masculine. We've really been working for thousands of years, you know, through our light. And, you know, that has, as we've been saying, has become more and more distorted. And the reason for that is because we haven't learned how to balance these two flames, is what we call them in our teachings, the twin flame. So the twin flame of God is the feminine love and the masculine light. And so when we learn how to work with these two frequencies, then we're starting to create imbalance. We start to manifest, therefore, our life in more harmony and imbalance. If we're not learning to, I mean, we only need to see, you know, you're here and sharing, you know, how you've had experiences of being burnt out, and how you've, you know, learning through the pushing and the doing and making it happen, and that real drive, and that's the masculine. You know, just keep going. We'll get there in the end. Push through. And when there isn't the softness of the love to come and hold what it is that you're meeting and be able to nurture and nourish you through that process, then, well, it's like the earth needs the sun and it needs water. There's no creation without both.
Yeah.
They're two different elements that hold two different frequencies, but they're the two cells of life. This earth wouldn't last if all we had was sun and no water.
Yeah.
We would burn out eventually. If we only had water and no sun,
drown.
And nothing would get birthed. Yeah. So our masculine and our feminine consciousness that lives within us, it's got nothing to do with gender. This is another issue that we often come across, is that people are trying to relate to themselves and the consciousness they hold of the masculine and the feminine, and they assign gender roles to that consciousness.
Yeah.
And it's not about that. It's about the vibration and the frequency that both the light and the love offer us. And when we allow ourselves to open to those two frequencies and learn how to work with them, dance with them, work together, again, isn't it a paradox that we look outside of ourselves often for that twin flame? How many times have you hear people say, oh, you know, my twin flame, my soulmate, and they're looking for that other person to complete themselves outside of themselves. And in truth, they're looking to create that divine union. We call it marriage, and we hook up with someone and get married, trying to create that divine union, when in truth, all of that is a mirror of what you're trying to create within yourself.
Yeah.
Which is the divine union between your own masculine and feminine consciousness. And being in relationship with another helps us to do that.
Yeah.
And when we awaken to consciously be in that relationship, then we can really start to learn about our own twin flame, because that twin flame and soulmate isn't living outside of you. That twin flame is actually you learning to meet the consciousness within you and learn how to balance that and learn how to bring the love and the light within you into balance. Have them work together. When they work together, your life flows. Everyone, you know, use words like, oh, we're in the zone, we're in the flow, right? Well, that's because you're having an experience of there being a balance of that quotient of love and light consciousness flowing through you. And so you feel held and supported, and things are flowing, and there's grace and there's ease. Yeah. And then when that balance of your light and love quotient becomes out of balance, and you become more filled with light and not enough love, then what happens? you start to meet resistance. Things start to become hard. It's like I'm pushing things uphill all the time. I'm hitting my head against a brick wall. Nothing seems to be flowing. There's no more ease and there's no more grace. Yes?
Yeah.
And that's a sign that we all need to actually stop the doing and stop thinking that we can create a resolution through keep doing.
Yeah.
And that we're going to fix the problem by keep doing, and actually pause and come back and sit in the being.
That's it.
And allow yourself just to receive. And as I said, it's not receiving at that point guidance necessarily. It's actually receiving a frequency that is going to support you, nourish you. It nourishes your cells. Where do you go when you go to bed at night?
Don't know. Sometimes I go to some pretty trippy places, but I don't know where they are.
I was on a cliff having this podcast this morning before it happened.
Really?
Which was really strange, yeah.
We go to bed at night and essentially we go into the void, which is the feminine heart of God. And what happens there? You become nourished, replenished, rejuvenated, regenerated. Healing takes place. Regeneration of your cells take place. Respite of your mind.
Yeah.
So that the beingness of you, the consciousness of you can be replenished. So you go into a state of no mind. And that's the feminine heart of God. That's the creation energy. That's where all potential lies.
How do you teach people this? Like through this, because you're saying you do with this Master's Way, the first year you're focusing on this masculine. And then the second year is a feminine. The third year
is Path of Mystery.
Path of Mystery. Ooh.
So it's learning to bring the two together.
Okay. Because you're saying it's quite a commitment, this, because I'd like to jump on there, but it starts in what, March?
April.
April. You meet every week, once a week for 3 years.
Essentially, yes.
If you continue
if you continue through the course. And, I did commit to putting a bit of a disclaimer out this year.
What's that?
Here it is.
Last year I had a really wonderful intake. I think there were like 39, 40 students that signed up. And my little disclaimer is be ready. Don't come and do a course like this just because it sounds good. And often, the ego, it's just like, oh yeah, or someone else has done it and oh yeah, that sounds good. And it's within the first couple of months, you start to sort out between those that are really ready to come and work on themselves versus those that realize, and often they, and there's no right or wrong, but you have to be ready for a journey.
Timing.
Like it's a timing, and you have to be ready for it. And if you're not, this is where I get, oh, it's not what I thought it was. And, I thought it was going to be something different. And really that's you just meeting your own resistance. And that's fine because there's no judgment around divine timing. It's just not ready for you yet. But I guess my disclaimer is that it is a deep dive into who you are.
Yeah.
And the path of light is exactly that. It's illuminating. And if you're not ready to take a look at what you've shoved in your closet, if you're not ready to take a look at what you've been suppressing or sweeping under the carpet or avoiding, then it's going to come up. It's going to slap you in the face and it's going to shake you up. Now, there is only potential in that for you. There is only opportunity in that for you. But you need to be ready to do the work. And you are given all the tools and the support. And this is also why it's weekly. Because, change and transformation is a step-by-step process. And, we come together. The first 5-6 weeks are spent doing some foundational lessons. So you really understand the concepts and you understand how to work with the tools.
Yeah.
And then we get into the lessons. Now, the lessons are channeled lessons. So we have key teachings, and then we actually all in group. And this is the other really powerful component of doing the work in group, which is why the masters have always said no person is to do this by themselves. They are to do this transformational work in group consciousness. Because when you come together in group consciousness, just like you said before, you create a temple, you create a portal of energy.
Field, yeah.
A field of energy. Now, every single being of light that has come into this school is part of that field. And every bit of you that you're working on, you're doing so on behalf of every other person. So you imagine a group of like-minded people now all coming together to work on enlightening themselves. As they meet a part of themselves and choose to work on that, they are doing that on behalf of everyone else in the group, because we're all connected.
Yeah.
If you understand the law of oneness, and if you really ready to embrace what that means, then what I'm doing for myself, I'm doing for you. What you're doing for yourself, you're doing for me.
Yeah.
And so it accelerates change and transformation when you come together and work in group consciousness. And so we are receiving transmissions, channeled transmissions through the teachings that Ishtar has sat in channel and received. And so every time we receive a lesson, we're receiving a transmission of consciousness, a frequency. And a lot of people experience that frequency by having a sense of just being knocked out. They'll come back around and go, oh my God, where did I go?
I felt that when Ishtar did the meditation.
Yeah.
I felt that it's kind of like it felt like the temperature changed, and then I felt like a pressure on my body.
Yep.
And the only time I've ever felt that is on the Gravitron, or when I went to town hall once and saw Abraham Hicks.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing. Just as soon as the channel came in, shift, and just this weird kind of pressure on my body. So I hear.
So you're receiving.
Profound.
Yeah,
it's profound.
It's profound. And what's so profound about it is when you understand what that transmission is offering you is an activation of codes of consciousness within you. So think about, every lesson is an activation. So it's going to either activate consciousness that is out of balance within you so that you can become aware of it and work with it, or it may activate the conscious light within you and activate more of your more of the gifts and the wisdom that you already hold, so you come into a greater understanding. But it is also going to activate your shadow. It's going to activate any energy you're holding that's sitting in separation that needs to be worked with.
Was it just brings it to the surface?
Yes. Yeah.
Brings it out.
Because we can't change what we're not aware of.
Yeah.
So there needs to be a gentle catalyst that...
It's like a purge.
Yes, activates that. And then you're given the support to work with that consciously. Because that's a vibration that you're meeting. Whatever is held within that shadow, whether that's manifesting as a belief and a patterning of behavior or a repetitive emotion. I mean, every thought has an emotion attached to it. That's how we have understanding and context for that thought. Yes. So when you are connecting to a vibration that holds self-limiting thought, it's naturally going to come with a limited emotion or feeling. Yeah. And that's giving you feedback. It's not your truth. It's just giving you feedback.
Yeah.
So that you can start to understand more about the energy and the consciousness that you're choosing to hold.
Yeah.
And then we have free will, so we have choice. We can choose to work with that. You're taught about the universal laws and how to work with the universal laws. And if you understand the universal law of vibration, then you'll start to understand that whatever vibration that you're holding that's tuned in, as you said before, to a radio station, it's like a vibration, right? Whatever radio station you're tuned into has its own set of beliefs, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Now, depending on what vibration, what radio station is going to give you access to what wisdom or limited consciousness, limited beliefs and ideas about yourself. So every week we are receiving a transmission. We're receiving an activation that is going to awaken something within us. And that something will always hold a gift, even if that something that is awakened is you meeting a deep part of you that's still holding sadness or grief or judgment or resentment or a deep unresolved wound. Might not even be relevant to this lifetime, but it's still a part of your consciousness that's affecting you in this lifetime.
Yeah.
And you're given an opportunity to meet that and resolve that energy. And so the more we resolve it, well, it's, it's like, I can give so many analogies. Imagine, a hose with running water through it and you go and stand on it. What happens? That flow, if you've got a kink in the hose, then that flow backs up. Yes. And so when you're given the opportunity to work with whatever creates a kink in your hose and stops things from flowing.
There's probably a few there.
Then you got, greater opportunity to bring through what you're really here to bring through.
Yeah.
And we're less limited. I'm less limited in my creations today than I've ever been because of this work.
Yeah.
And because I've, made that choice at that point. And that's why I don't hold any judgment around, students that come and then they realize that, I'm not ready for this. Because I swam on the surface for 10 years before I took a deep dive.
But they would receive some activations anyway through that process, hey, and maybe it just comes back around. Maybe they just need to take a pause and it comes back.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is so much support within the group.
Yeah.
You are assigned a buddy for the whole year to work with. So the course, each level goes for about 10 months. So we'll start in April and
I really want to do it.
Finished by the end of the year.
Yeah.
And you're assigned a buddy, and that buddy is there to offer you support, but also the law of reflection. Yeah, so they will trigger you at times because they're, mirror. And they're offering you that opportunity for growth.
Yeah.
You've come to do the work, so, let's do it. So the first year is very illuminating. And then the second year is all about learning to work with the love frequency, that voidal energy, and learning to go and sit in that voidal energy within your own being and learning to receive from that place. And the more that we allow ourselves to do that, the more powerful we are in our creations, because then we start to act on what we receive in that space.
It's like building momentum. On the flow.
So that's the Master's Way. We have another course called Path of the One Heart that also kicks off late April, and that's very much designed for light workers. So healers, practitioners, people who know that they are, light workers.
Yeah.
That really want to step on their journey more deeply and be guided to really activate their soul's mission and purpose,
yeah,
and learn how to ground the gifts of their soul.
Yeah. It's a big thing, I think, for a lot of people in that with healing, you know, because they're working so much up there, just putting their feet on the ground and bringing it in, grounding it 100%.
And that's
and we need them here.
That's it. And you know, it's one thing, as you say, to feel and know your purpose, but then again meet the energy that creates the resistance and the struggle to really ground it.
That's it.
And this is, you know, this is what the school, so it's guided by 12 ascended masters that taught the Essenes. And back in the Egyptian temples, the light workers used to be called Yanitaras. And so any soul that is attracted to the path of the one heart are because they actually hold Yanitara codes within their DNA. And they're attracted to the path of the one heart, and they're attracted to that work because their soul is calling them to have those codes activated within them so that they can actually come and ground the gifts of their soul. And so you're trained in two foundational disciplines. One is the harmonizers, which are the healers, and the others are the caretakers of the sacred light. I trained as a harmonizer, so I teach the foundations in the harmonizers. I wasn't trained in caretakers because I hold the codes of the harmonizer. So you work for the first year learning and training as a healer and harmonizer, which is opening to your harmonic code. So I use sound and vibration through sound in a lot of my healings, because that's the code that has been activated within me. And then in the second year, you move into your mission work. And my mission work, I was trained in as a scribe, which is to read the Akashic field.
Cool.
So it's to support people. Yeah. So
Thoth and Ganesha.
Sorry?
Thoth and Ganesha.
Yes.
The two celestial scribes.
Yes. So
we're scribes too, actually different. We work on a whiteboard, but
well, that's scribing.
Yeah, that's scribing.
So the work in that second year really opens you to your mission work as a soul. And so now continuing to practice that, because it is everything, as I said, everything comes back to you continuing to do the work on keeping your channel open and, you know, working with any energy that you're holding that's going to become a filter to what you're receiving. And the scribe work is beautiful because you're taught to really work with the consciousness that's been created through that record. And so receiving the record is like 20% of the work. It's really not about the record. I mean, I know lots of people go for Akashic records because they want to know the story. Oh, you know, what happened to me? What did I do? You know, that's like 20% of this work, because if you're supporting somebody to meet the consciousness that was held within that record, you're wanting to actually work with that consciousness and resolve what's sitting there, because that's what's limiting them. Yeah. They can't change the story, but they can work with the consciousness that they created as a result of that experience.
Yeah, okay. Wow.
And that's where the work of the scribe is done.
Yeah.
Bringing through, going into the Akashic field and retrieving that record is, like, as I said, is 20% of the work. 80% of the work is then receiving the consciousness that was created by that soul through that experience, through that record.
Yeah.
And then working with that consciousness to bring it back into balance.
Wow. It's amazing.
That's
I really need to get into this stuff.
so
it's exciting.
It is. It's I often describe the path of the one heart like Hogwarts school,
Yeah, it sounds like it.
right? It's your old.
You guys have uniforms there?
No, we don't. We don't subscribe.
Just a bit more low key, a bit more low
Right, we
key.
don't have invisible wands.
Yeah. But Jo, we could probably talk for many more hours, and maybe we can get you back on here again sometime. But and we've got an event to get to actually.
Yeah. But wow, what a conversation.
What a
There's
conversation.
there's so much in there. And even just this, like for me, this idea of what mastery is.
Yeah.
It's not mastering a thing, it's mastering yourself, which you then live through life, right? Like
Yeah.
it's not becoming the best at or a master at a craft.
Yeah.
And there's stages to mastery, isn't there? Like,
So much more to it, so many higher levels that then
Well, and I always share with my students that mastery is not about a goal or an end destination. Mastery is the practice.
journey. Yeah.
That is what mastery is. It's being in the practice of,
Yeah.
which is why Buddha always said, carry the water, chop the wood.
Yeah.
That is the mastery,
Yeah.
is being in the practice of the tools that support you to master
Mm.
your energy. So, again, we can be on that trajectory of thinking we need to get somewhere, and there is no end goal to the master's way. It is a path you're walking,
Yeah.
and that path is an inward journey that is designed to help you blossom the outward experience of your inward reality. And that's what it's there to support you with.
Beautiful. So, where can people find more info about the Master's Way and the work that you're doing, Jo?
Well, we kick off April the 18th which is a Tuesday night. It's 3 till 9 on a Tuesday night.
that's Australian Eastern Standard. Is it for everyone? Like people can dial in anyway?
Yes. So it's online.
3 till 9.
3 till 9.
Yeah.
Yep, online. Sorry, 6 till 9.
6 till the 9.
6
okay,
till 9
okay.
online, 6 p.m. till 9 p.m.
Yeah.
New South Wales time.
Australian Eastern Standard, yeah.
Yep. And you can find more information, just go to joannarushton.com. Go to certified courses,
Yeah.
and you'll see more information about the different certified courses that I teach there.
What about Instagram?
Social media handles?
Oh,
Oh, yes.
what's my social media handle?
It's Jo Rushton, isn't it?
Jo _Rushton_.
There you go.
I think.
That's it, isn't it? We'll post it
I'm
below.
pretty sure.
We'll post it below it anyway. What else do we say, Tom? This is my outro.
Well, you can follow us.
Yes.
Follow us on Instagram, Design on Purpose, or Design on Purpose on Instagram and TikTok. If you're listening to this, you can also watch it on YouTube. It's a video podcast. I don't know what that's called. Or just audio. And
Video podcast.
what about Wordplay, Rix?
WordPlay Studio. Yes, you can find, if you want to see more of the work that we do here, you can find us on Instagram at WordPlay Studio. You can find our website, wordplaystudio.com. And we're also trying to get the Telegram group going. So just check us out on Telegram at WordPlay Studio.
And if you've made it this far, thank you. It's another banger, but please like and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date with all the other amazing guests we're yet to have on here, like Jo. So
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Cheers.
Great to have you.